why blacks were attending school longer and at higher rates after the Civil War, and what role did the North have in this, and when did this trend reverse? And African Americans began attending school longer and at higher rates, I said, because after Civil War, because they understood the importance of education and the role it could have in their lives. So they had an opportunity to become educated and go to school, and Northern policy helped with this. There are a lot of people moving south from the North, and the North still had a presence of military there, so that allowed them to go to school under separate but equal policy and stuff. But as soon as the North started bringing troops out of the South, those roles started to reverse, and then slowly there's more and more segregation in schools, and the school districts, the black schools, they were discriminated against. They didn't really get much funding or any really real support from local government. And I think that's about it for that. And then is it still reversed was the second part of the question. And I said obviously it's not still reversed in the sense of there's schools for white kids and black kids, and but it's reversed somewhat in by school districts. There's high proportions of black kids in schools and white kids in schools, and this is mostly because of how districts are created. There's been I looked some stuff up, and most of the times when they create new school districts now, the new school district that's created in a suburb or whatever is usually predominantly white, and it gets better funding, and it's they divide the district into an area where it's socioeconomically it's a wealthier part of whatever area, and they get more funding and stuff. And part of the reason they get more funding is just because property tax is the main revenue source for schools, and that's where they get a lot of their funding. So if you have a district that is predominantly white and they section this part off for the district, and they get more funding because they live in nicer houses and make more money, so they get that money to their school. But then the old district that is has a lower socioeconomic status, they get less funding now. So there's still segregation, but not the laws and the social implications where it's oh, black kids can't come to the school. It's more oh, we're just going to create a new district that's better funded and kids have better opportunities. And then how can we address this? Obviously, without getting into legal stuff, there's obviously legislation stuff that can be passed, but electing local officials that are gonna help you is a big thing. And also
Okay, I think his computer froze. Can anybody else hear him? Okay. Poor Russell. I can go at least until he comes back. So, So I was talking about like Booker T. Washington's views and like African Americans, as well as kind of the idea of like the Tuskegee tribe or group, whatever they were called. Oh, Miss Park, take over.
Can you hear me now? Okay, helped if my mic's not muted, right? All right. Should I redo it all? Did you hear anything?
Just the end cut off.
Okay. About like how we can reverse this, like that. Okay, yeah. So I was talking about how like the school districts, like now there's like segregation and stuff more in the sense of like places with a higher socioeconomic status will have a school district with people that are of a higher socioeconomic status. So the best thing we can do to combat that is probably like local representation in government and improving community engagement in like places where there's lower socioeconomic status, and like scholarships and things like that help a lot too. It helps like people who are disadvantaged, but that's about, yeah.
Okay. So then mine was about Booker T. Washington's views on Black education, and then also the kind of education he offered at the Tuskegee Institute, and then also asked about hidden curriculum. So my response basically was that his basic views was that he viewed a person of his basic views on the education of blacks was described as the expected view of a person of his nature would have. That's like a not a direct quote, but that was pretty. Anyways, he obviously stood for equal education among black kids, and when the South became a one-party region under the ruling elite, he sought to contain the Freedmen's Progressive Campaign for Democracy and Universal Schooling. He succeeded as an educational and political statesman for African American, and a big thing is that it was his belief that despite political compromises, there was a favorable impact on the advancement of public education in black communities. And then he worked with graduates on like ways to improve the school systems. And a big thing was like making school year longer, because I think it was only from like November to March or something, and making it from like September to May or around that. And then there was like some misunderstandings with Washington, but the reading said like regardless of how his message came across, like he never failed to use his voice in every opportunity for the advancement of public education. Like that he always stood by that his entire career. And then the Tuskegee story, and that was the worst treatment of Black public education since slavery. But there was an overall improvement in Black elementary and secondary schools. There was an educational awakening, and the town was rooted in the Deep South, in the Black Belt, where people have struggled for generations to create some form of system to later be used as education. And that took a while for the Tuskegee to fulfill the promise for Black education. And that's really all I have.
Okay. Mine was on social Darwinism and stuff like that. I said Booker T. Washington believed that Blacks evolved later than whites and therefore were less advanced. Washington played a direct role in the African American community and worked nonstop to improve the lives of Blacks. A numerous number were born into slavery. Because of their faith, he felt that slavery was... Wait, that doesn't make sense. Okay, skip that. He felt that slavery was a natural process that gave African Americans an opportunity to learn and evolve from their interactions with the advanced white culture. He saw free market economies as unbiased and fair. He believed that the market was colorblind, so he thought that a Black person who owned a store would have the same outcome as a white person who owned a similar store. This obviously was not the case because of the widespread presence of racism during that period. Many white shoppers would only shop at stores owned by white race. Washington not only believed that whites were loftier, but believed that African Americans should purely learn from their superiors and not be able to vote or be involved in politics. That's it.
I had the fourth response, which the first half of the question talked about like the differences between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. They were both towering figures in African American history, each with their own distinct vision for racial progress. Washington was born into slavery. He advocated for a practical approach to uplift the Black community. He stressed the importance of vocational training and economic self-sufficiency, believing that by acquiring practical skills, Black people could gain acceptance and respect in American society. His famous Tuskegee Institute focused on teaching agricultural and industrial skills to his students. In contrast, W.E.B. Du Bois, who was born free and educated at Harvard, advocated for a more radical path to racial advancement. He argued that true equality could only be achieved through higher education, intellectual development, and civil rights activism. And Du Bois co-founded the NAACP and used his platform to fight against racial discrimination and inequality in all aspects of society. He believed in the power of education, not just for practical skills, but also for fostering critical thinking, cultural awareness, and leadership abilities among Black people. And while Washington's pragmatic approach provided immediate solutions to the challenges faced by Black people in segregated society, Du Bois' vision laid the groundwork for long-term social change and empowerment. And both men made significant contributions to the struggle for Black rights in like different areas and at different times. With Washington emphasizing economic self-sufficiency and Du Bois advocating education and civil rights activism, and their differing perspectives reflect the complexity and African-American experience and continue to shape discussions in race and equality today.
Okay, my response was a little bit similar. My question was, what seems more valuable to me as a student? The broader liberal education proposed by W.E.B. Du Bois, or the more specific career education promoted by Booker T. Washington, and then which one I thought would have been more valuable to Blacks living at the time of Washington and Du Bois. So I said that I believe W.E.B. Du Bois' broad liberal education is more valuable as a student today. He encouraged critical thinking, activism, cultural awareness, and pursuit of intellect, allowing for the pursuit of justice and new improved learning opportunities. These values are heavily reflected in the American education system today, instead of just focusing on acquiring trade skills for immediate work, as seen in Booker T. Washington's education. Students can learn creatively and liberally, exploring their own interests and enhancing their overall intellect in multiple subjects. But that being said, I believe at the time of W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, Booker T. Washington's educational approach would have been more valuable to Black people, because the prevalent racism of this era made self-sufficiency and immediate skills extremely important for Black people. Trade jobs during this era were the fastest way for African Americans to escape maltreatment and poverty.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay. All right, I'll see you guys next week then.